All right, Dustin, clean plant material is really important. When we talk about certified vines, we're talking about virus-free vines, primarily in the certification process. Can you tell us a little bit about how the nursery handles its certification process to get clean plants to growers?
Yeah, so it's a pretty rigorous process for all nurseries to get certified material up and running and established. So originally, we have to have the ground has to be virgin soil, no permanent crop for at least 10 years, whether it be trees or grapevines or whatever. We have the CDFA come out and they inspect the block that we're proposing to plant. They take some nematode samples to make sure there's no detrimental nematodes there. We generally fumigate to make sure there's also another buffer, an added protection. There also has to be a buffer of space between certified vines and non-certified vines. That way we can keep them separated. After that kind of process is all approved, we source the original material from UC Davis, Foundation Plant Services. And that can be traced back to 2 mother vines that they house and maintain at all times, and they test every single year. So once we get that material from Davis, whether it be cuttings or mispropagated green plants, we expand on that, replicate them as many as we need to fulfill the demand that we're seeing or hope to see. So we'll go ahead and replicate those. Then we plant those, and then it's inspected again by CDFA to confirm that what we've put in, the buffers are there, everything's good to go. Then we're on their normal testing rotation, where they test for, I think 5 major viruses, family, flea frill, GVA, GVB, and red blotch. So they do that on a rotation across the certified block. And we also have our additional testing annually. So we come in with a lot heavier, intense program of testing. So we're testing pretty much every single mother vine every year for those same viruses and a couple others as well.
Wow. Yes. Testing every vine is important. And, for me, the work that would go into that for a grower to do would just be not viable, not economically viable. But to know that the nursery is able to do that level of testing is really impressive.
Yeah, it's definitely an intense process. It's very structured and scheduled, to make sure that everything's labeled correctly, everything's taken in a proper process and, sent off to the lab and we get results in time. So everything has to be tested and results received before we ever take one cutting off of those blocks.
So, Dustin, one of the questions I think that growers have, because they're not behind the scenes at the nursery, is
Yeah.
they need to make an order well in advance of when they're going to plant their vineyard. So, can you walk us through the timeline of when a grower ideally should order their custom grafted vines, and what happens in that time frame between the order and when that vine arrives at their doorstep?
Yeah. So I think probably the most frequently asked question I get from growers is like, what's the latest I can place my order? That's kind of starting at the end, and it's kind of starting in the wrong place. We generally like to have orders, 14 to 18 months in advance for dormants, and probably, 8 months, even 12 months for greens if we can. At that point, we're basically selling from the same stockpile of rootstock and scion material on an annual basis, and there may be ups and downs of production numbers depending on the age of the mother blocks and things like that. But it's either going to go to green vines in the greenhouse for the current year, or it's going to go to dormants to the field for the following year delivery. And so you're basically whittling that pile down as sales come in. So there's no end date. There is an end date when we finish grafting and we don't do any more grafting, but there's no end date of when you can place your order. I would just tell growers, the further out you plan ahead, the more, secure in getting exactly what clone, what rootstock, quantity, timing, all those things are going to be able to be executed on. So when somebody calls me, right now and they're working for 2027 dormants, I can pretty much do whatever they want in whatever quantity they want, reserve the field space, reserve the materials, we're good to go. If somebody calls me in January and wants green vines in May, we're going to be restricted because we're already in the middle of cutting season. There's a possibility that maybe some of that material is already sold to somebody else. And we're going to have to look at the availability and really the timing. Hey, maybe you're way too late and you're going to be in the second round of green vines, which is like July instead of May, so it's one of those things where order as early as possible to get exactly what you want. Now, a lot of growers are not, I wouldn't say spoiled, but they're used to nurseries having excess stock and they call in and last minute, oh yeah, you've got it. That's not always the scenario, but in the big years, when we're doing a lot of vines, there is excess material and sometimes growers get lucky. They can call me in April and have plants in May just because it's excess off of somebody's order, but that's not always the case. So I wouldn't plan for that.